New CEO fired me after I built the company's top-performing division for 14 years. We're restructuring to maximize shareholder value, he announced in our brief meeting. Your position was being eliminated effective immediately. I nodded respectfully, cleared my office, and left without drama. His urgent texts began when, "We're restructuring to maximize shareholder value," he announced in our brief meeting. "Your position is being eliminated effective immediately. My name is Clayton Reddick. For 14 years, I built the Eastern Division of Northrise Apparel from nothing into their top-performing unit. Not with flashy presentations or corporate buzzwords, with trust, consistency, and honest work. I handled our key accounts personally. Knew their concerns, their families, their quirks. I'd built relationships that brought in $4,200,000 in annual contracts. The new CEO, Brandon, had been with us exactly 8 weeks. Harvard Business School, buzzed haircut, custom suits. He'd never once asked me about our client relationships. Never asked how we'd grown 18% year over year, while other divisions flatlined. Never wondered why Suncoast Financial and Vector Properties, our 2 biggest accounts, specifically requested me on quarterly calls. When security walked me to my office to pack my things, I noticed Alicia from HR couldn't meet my eyes. She'd been there 15 years longer than me. The CFO, Thomas, walked past, then doubled back. "Clayton," he started, but stopped himself. He just patted my shoulder awkwardly and continued down the hall. I packed quietly. Family photos, the fishing trophy the Vector Properties team had given me after our company retreat, the handwritten note from Diane at Suncoast thanking me for rushing their order when her boss was in a bind, 14 years fitting into a single cardboard box. I nodded respectfully to security, walked to my car without drama or threats. In my rearview mirror, I watched the glass tower shrink as I pulled away. For the first time in 14 years, I didn't feel the weight of 30 employees and millions in contracts on my shoulders. That should have felt liberating. Instead, it felt wrong. I started at Northrise when they were still operating out of a warehouse in Charlotte. Back then, we were just trying to break into corporate uniform contracts with regional banks and healthcare companies. Eastern Division was hemorrhaging money when they brought me in. I had 9 employees and a mandate to fix it, or we close it. Over those first 3 years, I personally drove to every prospect within 100 miles. I learned about their pain points with their current suppliers, late deliveries, poor quality control, inconsistent sizing. I fixed all of that. My team grew to 15, then 25 people. We moved into better office space. I promoted Janice from customer service to account management when I saw how she handled difficult clients. I hired Keith fresh out of design school when he showed me mock-ups that solved problems we didn't even know we had. My son Dylan was 12 when I started at Northrise. Now he's 26 working as an architect in Seattle. My wife Jennifer supported every late night, every weekend emergency, every time I had to fly out to save an account. "It's building something that will last," I'd tell her. She believed me. 3 CEOs had come and gone during my tenure. Each valued what we'd built. The company went from regional player to national competitor. My division consistently led the way in growth and retention. The merger last year changed things. Kestrel Group bought us out, installed their own board. I didn't worry initially. Numbers speak for themselves in business, but the cracks started showing. Brandon Kerr arrived with his efficiency experts and spreadsheets. They didn't understand the relationships that held everything together. In meetings, they talked about client acquisition costs, but never about client relationships. 2 weeks before my termination, Brandon asked for a report on all major accounts. I compiled everything: contract values, renewal dates, growth opportunities. What I didn't include, because you can't quantify it on a spreadsheet, was how I'd attended the funeral of Suncoast's procurement director's father, how I personally inspected Vector's first major order at 2 a.m. to ensure everything was perfect for their company-wide rollout. When Brandon's assistant scheduled our meeting for just 10 minutes, I knew. I'd seen it happen before to others. I just never thought it would happen to me. The morning after I was let go, I sat in my home office staring at my phone. No messages from work, former work. Jennifer brought me coffee, squeezed my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "They don't understand what they've done," I said. I wasn't angry. That's what surprised me most. I felt a strange clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I opened my personal laptop and looked at my contacts, not the company database, but my own records, names, numbers, personal emails. 14 years of genuine connections. The first call came at 9:30 a.m. Diane from Suncoast Financial. Clayton, we just got a mass email about organizational changes at Northrise. Please tell me you're not affected. I took a slow breath. I was let go yesterday. The silence spoke volumes. Who's taking over the accounts? She asked finally. They didn't say. I assume one of Brandon's new team members. Another pause. We've got our contract renewal in 6 weeks. I know. Clayton, I need to be frank. The board only approved staying with Northrise last time because of you. The pricing was higher than competitors, but you always delivered, always fixed problems before they became problems. I didn't respond immediately. In the background I could hear her tapping her pen against her desk, a habit she had when making difficult decisions. I need to talk to my team, she said finally. Can I call you back on this number? Of course. After hanging up I walked downstairs and sat at our kitchen table. Jennifer was preparing lunch. You okay? She asked. I nodded. I think I will be. My phone buzzed with a text from Keith, my design lead at Northrise. Brandon called emergency meeting, asked about client contact info for your accounts. No one's giving him straight answers. What's happening? I set the phone down without replying. Later that afternoon, Harold from Vector Properties called, then Michael from Eastern Bank, then Stephanie from Bright Healthcare Systems. The conversations all followed the same pattern: shock at my departure, concerns about the future, questions about their contracts. I was honest with each of them. I didn't bad-mouth Northrise or Brandon. I simply answered their questions. Yes, I had been terminated. No, I wasn't aware of the transition plan. Yes, I was considering my options going forward. By evening, I had 5 missed calls from Brandon Kerr. I didn't return them. That night, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet of my own, not of clients or contracts but of possibilities. Companies that had tried to recruit me over the years. Competitors who might value someone with my experience and connections. Even the option of starting my own consulting firm. For 14 years, I'd built bridges for Northrise Apparel. Now, I had to decide whether to burn them or build new ones for myself. I chose the latter. 3 days after my termination, Brandon's texts became calls. I let them go to voicemail. On the 4th day, I finally picked up. Clayton, we need to talk, he said, his voice tighter than in our last meeting. Some concerns have come up with several key accounts. I'm sure your team can handle it, I replied. That's just it. Suncoast is threatening to pull their contract. They're saying they only worked with us because of you. I watched a cardinal land on the feeder outside my window. That's their decision to make. Look, maybe we move too quickly with these restructuring changes. The board is concerned about the potential revenue impact. We could discuss a consulting arrangement to help with the transition. For a moment, I considered it. A consulting gig would be easy money while I figured out my next move, but something felt off about his sudden change of heart. I appreciate the offer, but I need some time. I'll think about it. That afternoon, I met Jerry Campbell for coffee. He'd been Northrise's CFO before the merger, and had also been pushed out. He still had friends at corporate. Brandon's in full panic mode, Jerry said, stirring his coffee. Apparently, Suncoast and Vector both sent formal letters indicating they won't renew their contracts. Did they say why? Loss of key relationship personnel, leadership instability, pretty much corporate speak for we only trusted Clayton. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of validation and concern for my former team. There's more, Jerry continued. Brandon told the board, you're sabotaging the company, calling clients and telling them to leave. I set my cup down. I haven't told anyone to do anything. I've taken their calls and answered honestly. That's not how Brandon's painting it. He's building a case that you violated your termination agreement. Might try to claw back your severance. On my drive home, Brandon called again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, his tone had changed completely. Clayton, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We value everything you've built here. The board has authorized me to offer you a senior VP position. Better title, better package than before. Call me back. We should discuss. That evening, Daniel Thompson called. He was CEO of Summit Ridge Outfitters, a smaller competitor who tried to recruit me twice over the years. I heard what happened at Northrise, he said. Their loss. My offer still stands, but I'd like to sweeten it. Senior VP, equity stake, and complete control over your client relationships. I told him I needed a few days to consider all my options. That night, I received an email from Northrise's legal department claiming I was in violation of non-solicitation agreements. The language was threatening, implying litigation if I didn't cease interfering with company relationships. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend without comment. The next morning, I had my answer. My lawyer friend Paul Henderson called early. "This legal threat is paper thin," he said. "They're trying to intimidate you. But I looked at your contract. You never signed a non-solicitation agreement. The standard non-compete only prevents you from joining a competitor for 6 months. It doesn't stop clients from following you." I remembered signing that contract 14 years ago in a different era of the company. The old CEO had been straightforward. "This just prevents you from taking our training and immediately working for the competition. Nothing about client relationships. So I've done nothing wrong legally? Not a thing. In fact, if they pursue this, we could counter for wrongful termination. The abrupt nature, the lack of transition plan for a senior leader. Courts don't look favorably on that." I thanked him and hung up just as an email arrived from Janice at Northrise. Subject line, "You should know this." She'd attached an internal presentation from 2 weeks before my termination. Brandon had mapped out a complete restructuring. The plan included eliminating my position regardless of performance, replacing experienced staff with cheaper recent graduates, and raising prices on long-term clients by 15% once contracts renewed. A note on slide 12 read, "Relationship-dependent business model presents significant risk. Need to transition to system-dependent model to maximize margins." They hadn't fired me because I was failing. They'd fired me because I was succeeding in a way that didn't fit their spreadsheet vision. More disturbing was a list of team reduction targets. Keith, Janice, and 3 others from my division, marked for termination once I was gone. I printed the document and sat with it at my kitchen table. Jennifer read over my shoulder. "They were planning to dismantle everything you built," she said quietly. "And blame any fallout on me," I added. My phone buzzed. Another text from Brandon. "Board meeting tomorrow. Need to discuss reconciliation ASAP. Please call." I set the phone down and looked at the presentation again. The last slide showed projected revenue after all changes. 22% higher margins, assuming all clients stayed despite price increases and service reductions. It was a house of cards. I called Daniel at Summit Ridge back. "I'm interested in your offer with one condition," I said. "I want to bring my core team, 5 people total." "Done," he answered without hesitation. "When can you start?" 2 weeks. "And I'll need official offer letters for all of us today." That evening, I called Keith, then Janice, then the others. I explained everything, the termination, the restructuring plan, their names on the cut list. I told them about Summit Ridge's offer. All 5 said yes immediately. I slept better that night than I had since the termination. I didn't return Brandon's calls or emails. Instead, I scheduled meetings with our top clients, not to poach them, but to check in as a friend. I met Diane from Suncoast for lunch near her office. "We're not renewing with Northrise," she said before even ordering. "The question is where we go next. I can't solicit your business right now," I explained. "Legally, I need to be careful." She smiled. "I understand. But hypothetically, if you were working somewhere that offered similar services, we would be very interested in following you." By week's end, I'd had similar conversations with all 5 major clients. None had received calls from Brandon or anyone else at Northrise attempting to salvage the relationships. Meanwhile, Summit Ridge sent formal offer letters to my team. One by one they submitted their resignations at Northrise. The following Monday, Brandon showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the garage working on my old Chevy when he pulled into the driveway in his Mercedes. "We need to talk, Clayton," he said, anxiety clear on his face. "This has gone too far. The board is breathing down my neck. Key team members resigning, clients threatening to leave." "Sounds challenging," I replied, wiping my hands on a rag. "Unfortunately, I've accepted a position elsewhere." His face flushed. "You're joining a competitor that violates your non-compete. Summit Ridge isn't on the restricted list in my contract. Paul Henderson confirmed it yesterday." "You're talking to lawyers now?" "Clayton, be reasonable. Whatever they're offering, we'll beat it." I closed the hood of my truck. "It's not about the money, Brandon. It never was." "Then what do you want? Name it." I looked at him directly for the first time. I wanted respect for 14 years of building something valuable. I wanted a conversation, not a 10-minute dismissal. I wanted my team protected, not targeted for elimination to pad some spreadsheet. His expression changed as he realized I knew about the restructuring plan. That was just a draft. A scenario planning exercise. "Goodbye, Brandon. I walked past him toward my house. "The board will fight this," he called after me. "We'll sue you, Summit Ridge, everyone involved." I turned back one last time. "You can try, but before you do, ask yourself what will cost shareholders more, letting me walk away quietly or a public legal battle explaining why all your major clients and top talent left simultaneously." He had no answer for that. A week later, I started at Summit Ridge. 2 weeks after that, my non-compete period ended. Within a month, 4 of our 5 major clients from Northrise had signed new contracts with Summit Ridge, specifically requesting me as their account manager. I never called anyone else at Northrise. I never spoke badly about the company in public. I didn't have to. 6 months after I joined Summit Ridge, I was reviewing quarterly numbers in my new office when Daniel knocked on my door. "You might want to see this," he said, placing his tablet in front of me. It was a financial news article about Northrise Apparel. The headline read, "CEO Brandon Kerr steps down amid financial shortfall." The article detailed how Northrise had missed quarterly projections by 18%. The Eastern Division, my former territory, had seen nearly 40% of its business evaporate. The board had accepted Brandon's resignation effective immediately. I handed the tablet back without comment. "You don't seem surprised," Daniel noted. "Hard to build relationships on spreadsheets," I replied. That afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from Thomas, Northrise's CFO. "The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss recovery strategies. Your name came up. Would you consider a conversation?" I didn't respond. Instead, I finalized our quarterly presentation for Suncoast Financial. Our team had delivered their new corporate uniforms 2 weeks early. The feedback had been overwhelmingly positive. Diane had already introduced us to 2 other potential clients in their network. The next day, Jerry Campbell called. "Thought you'd want to know. Kestrel Group is trying to sell off Northrise. The stock's down 22% since you left. Who's buying?" "That's the thing. No takers yet. Word is they're trying to reach out to you through back channels. The board thinks you're the only one who can stabilize the client relationships." I thanked Jerry for the information and went back to work. Later, I took my team out for lunch to celebrate our first 2 quarters of consecutive growth. Keith showed sketches for a new product line. Janice shared updates on client feedback. We discussed Summit Ridge's expansion plans. No one mentioned Northrise. That evening, I received a direct email from Eleanor Barnes, Northrise's board chair. "Clayton, the situation has become untenable. We made a grave error in judgment. Would you consider returning as CEO? Complete autonomy, significant equity stake board seat. Name your terms." I closed my laptop without replying. The next morning, I called a meeting with my team at Summit Ridge. "I've been approached about returning to Northrise," I said plainly. "I wanted you all to hear it from me first. I'm declining the offer." Keith nodded. "Figured they'd try eventually." Janice smiled. "Too little, too late." "Exactly," I said. "We're building something better here." That afternoon, I sent a brief email to Eleanor. "I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. I'm committed to my current position. I wish Northrise the best going forward." 3 days later, the news broke. Summit Ridge Outfitters had acquired Northrise Apparel's Eastern Division in a strategic asset purchase. The press release highlighted the move as reuniting key talent with established client relationships. Daniel had negotiated the deal quietly, paying pennies on the dollar for what had once been Northrise's crown jewel. The board had no choice. It was either sell to us or watch it collapse entirely. I never had to strike back directly. The market did it for me. 1 year after my termination from Northrise, I drove past their former Eastern Division office. The Summit Ridge logo now hung where the Northrise sign had once been. The building looked the same, but everything inside had changed. We'd rehired some of the staff who'd been let go during Brandon's brief tenure. We'd recovered 3 more client relationships that had deteriorated after my departure. The division now generated more revenue under Summit Ridge than it ever had under Northrise. I parked across the street and watched employees leaving for the day. Familiar faces mixed with new ones. They looked happy, engaged, purposeful. When I got home, Jennifer was in the kitchen making dinner. "I drove by the old office today," I told her. She studied my expression. "Nostalgia or closure?" "Closure, I think," I replied. "Did you know it's been exactly 1 year?" She nodded. I remembered. "That's why I made your favorite tonight." Over dinner, Dylan called from Seattle to share news about a major project his architecture firm had landed. "How's the new job going, Dad?" he asked. "Good. Building something that will last, I replied. The same words I'd used for 14 years at North Rise, but this time, I knew it was true. Later that evening, I received a text from Jerry Campbell. North Rise's remaining divisions just got acquired by Gravora Group. Clean sweep. Nothing left of the original company. I set my phone down and walked out to the deck. The spring air was warm, filled with possibility. I thought about Brandon. Wondered briefly what he was doing now. I hoped he'd learned something, though I doubted it. I thought about all those years building bridges for a company that didn't value them. The late nights, missed family dinners, postponed vacations. The sacrifices had been real, but so were the relationships I'd built. In the end, those relationships had followed me, not because I'd asked them to, but because we'd built something authentic together. No spreadsheet could capture that value. No restructuring could erase it. The next morning, I arrived at Summit Ridge early. I reviewed our quarterly projections, now 30% above target. I checked our client retention numbers, 97%, the highest in company history. Daniel stopped by my office. Board approved your proposal, he said. Employee ownership program starts next quarter. Keith and Janice will head up the implementation team. I nodded. They'll do it right. You know, Daniel said, leaning against the doorframe. When all this started, I thought we were just getting a talented executive and some lucrative client relationships. I didn't realize we were getting a completely different way of doing business. Relationships over transactions, I replied. Always. After he left, I opened my desk drawer and removed the fishing trophy Vector Properties had given me years ago. I placed it on my shelf, next to new photos of my team at Summit Ridge. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need vindication. I just needed to build something that would last. This time I had.
When I arrived at my sister's wedding venue, the ceremony was already over. My mother and sister, holding wine glasses, smiled and said, "Finally here? Your seat has already been cleared. LOL. As the guests around me chuckled, I said nothing and walked away. But the next day, they called me over and over again. I ignored every call. In a quiet residential area of Greenwich, Connecticut, you can see the morning mist-covered lawn from my bedroom window. It's been 3 years since my father passed away. While the scenery of this town remains unchanged, our family dynamics have shifted dramatically. Every morning, as I stand by the window drinking coffee before heading to work, vivid memories of my father come flooding back. My father, William Wilson, was a well-known investment advisor in Greenwich. He worked tirelessly from morning until late at night, building a stable life for our family. Then one day he suddenly vanished from our lives due to a heart attack. Our last dinner together was steak, his favorite. That evening, as always, he had smiled at me, saying, "I'm leaving the future in your hands, Jen." As a senior analyst at Morgan & Brooks, I earn $150,000 a year. My father's life insurance and survivor's pension alone weren't enough to maintain my mother's lifestyle. Plus, there was my sister Rachel's college tuition. To fulfill her dream of studying design, "I really want to study at this university," she had said. I dipped into my savings to cover her tuition. At the time, my boss had recommended a transfer to an investment bank in Manhattan. The salary would have been significantly higher, but I turned it down, feeling I needed to stay close to my family. Now, my sister works at a high-end apparel shop called Elegance, but most of her salary disappears into the latest fashion trends. Whenever she struggles with credit card payments, she invariably shows up at my apartment. "I'll be more careful from next month," she says, "but I've experienced enough times to know these are empty promises." Mother remains as devoted as ever to local church activities, never missing an event at First Presbyterian Church. While maintaining a modest appearance on the surface, she can't let go of her attachment to luxury brands. Those expenses, too, ultimately fall on my shoulders. The church donations in particular keep increasing year after year. "We have to maintain appearances," Mother says, "but maintaining those appearances is gradually depleting my savings." 3 months ago, amid all this, my sister announced her engagement. Her fiancé was Michael Thompson, an up-and-coming Italian restaurant owner. His newly opened restaurant on Greenwich Avenue was reportedly receiving high praise from local critics. "He's such a wonderful person," my sister exclaimed with sparkling eyes, while Mother proudly added, "He's a rare find in this town, a young chef with excellent taste." Watching them, I felt like an outsider. However, shortly after the engagement announcement, my sister visited my apartment. "Jen, this is the most important day of my life." A ceremony at First Presbyterian Church, followed by a lavish reception at the Hyatt Regency. When shown the estimate, I could hardly believe my eyes. She wanted a Vera Wang wedding dress, and had plans to hire the town's most reputable chef for catering. "You're the only one I can turn to," Mother said, and while heaving a deep sigh, I decided to sell the stocks my father had left behind. $50,000. It wasn't a small amount for me, but I decided to manage it for my family and my sister's happiness. I thought Father would have wanted his last asset to be dedicated to my sister's new beginning in life. He had always put family first, trying to give us the best life possible. However, at that time, I couldn't imagine how this decision would dramatically change our family dynamics. As wedding preparations progressed, my sister gradually reduced contact with me. Even calls from mother became limited to matters concerning wedding expenses. Still, I believed everything would return to normal once it was all over. On the morning of the wedding day, I woke up while it was still dark. At my office in a high-rise on Greenwich Avenue, I had an important investment analysis meeting with the Asian market starting unusually early at 7 a.m. It's a meeting I absolutely can't avoid, I had explained to my sister Rachel the day before. I'll head straight to the church once it's over, I'll make it in time for the ceremony. But my sister had worn an obviously dissatisfied expression. You're prioritizing work over your only sister's wedding? As I put on my navy designer suit and turned on my computer, the Asian market stock prices were already displayed on the monitor. The ceremony at First Presbyterian Church was scheduled for 1 p.m. Normally the meeting would end by 10 a.m. That was the timeline I had planned around. Ms. Wilson, could you please explain your outlook on the Chinese market again in more detail? About 2 hours into the meeting, an unexpected question came from a Shanghai client. On the other side of the monitor were the serious faces of more than 20 investors. The success or failure of this deal meant millions of dollars in profit for the company. Excuse me, could I have a moment? I desperately flipped through my documents. My smartphone kept vibrating in my pocket. I knew it was Rachel, but I couldn't answer the phone now. Why aren't you answering when the ceremony is about to start? That was the message I would hear later. Chinese technology stocks are plummeting. Red arrows appeared one after another on the meeting room monitor. The client's expressions grew tense. Ms. Wilson, what's the impact on our investment strategy? Questions kept flying and the meeting ran far beyond its scheduled time. When the clock struck noon, anxiety spread through my chest. If I changed quickly and rushed to the church, I might still make it. However, leaving at this crucial moment would be unprofessional. What would father have chosen? We need to wait a bit longer until the market stabilizes, I said, and the clients nodded. In that moment, I had made my decision to prioritize my responsibility as an investment advisor over my family obligations. The meeting finally ended after 2 p.m. As I hurriedly left the conference room, my boss called out, "Excellent handling. Thanks to you, we avoided major losses." Those words rang hollow in my heart. I hailed a taxi and headed to First Presbyterian Church. Even though I urged the driver to hurry, Friday afternoon traffic showed no mercy. The townscape visible through the car window felt colder than usual. There were over 20 unread messages on my smartphone. The tone of the messages conveyed both urgency and anger. When I arrived at the Hyatt Regency after 3 p.m., I entered the reception hall to find the venue about to be cleaned up. The tablecloths were wrinkled, and confetti was scattered on the floor. Used glasses were carelessly stacked on tables stained with wine. My sister, in her gorgeous wedding dress, was smiling and talking with her groom Michael. Mother was chatting with guests holding an expensive wine glass. The scene looked perfect, like a painting, and completely alien to me. My sister slowly turned as she noticed my footsteps. "Finally showed up? We've already cleared away your place setting." Her voice lacked the warmth I once knew in my sister. Mother said while tilting her wine glass, "To be late on such an important day." At those words, surrounding guests snickered. Their laughter cut through my heart like sharp blades. At my feet lay a fallen place card. Jennifer Wilson written on it, now just something unnecessary in this place, stepped on and crumpled by someone's foot. Dressed in my designer navy suit, I stood there speechless. A colder atmosphere than the tension in the morning's conference room enveloped me. The $50,000 from selling father's memorial stocks. The decision I made wishing for my sister's happiness. All of it seemed to mock me as meaningless. I left without saying a word. Passing through the Hyatt Regency's luxurious lobby, I stepped out into the twilight street. The shadows of the high-rise buildings stretched long, overlapping with my own shadow. When I got into my car and gripped the steering wheel, tears finally rolled down my cheeks. My smartphone started ringing again. My sister's name appeared on the screen. I pressed the reject button, then I started the engine and quietly drove away. The next morning, I woke to light streaming through my apartment window facing Greenwich Avenue. I wished yesterday's events had been a nightmare, but the 52 missed calls displayed on my smartphone confronted me with reality. Most of the calls were from my sister Rachel, over 10 from my mother Patricia. There were also calls from unknown numbers, probably relatives who had attended the wedding. My mailbox was full of unread messages. The content of these messages was far from apologetic. Rather, they were filled with accusations that I had ruined the wedding. Mother's messages, in particular, were peppered with concerns about maintaining face in the First Presbyterian Church community. While brewing coffee, I opened my computer. First, I printed out 3 months of bank statements, the transfer record of the $50,000 given to my sister for the wedding, and the transaction record from selling father's memorial stocks. I carefully scanned and saved all documents. Next, I opened the website of a law firm on Greenwich Avenue, Harrison & Partners Law Firm, which had connections with my father. My hand was surprisingly steady as I filled out the appointment reservation form. "Thank you for your call, Miss Wilson." The voice of attorney James Harrison on the phone carried the same warmth as always. "I had a long relationship with your father," he prefaced, before giving me precise advice. "A certified demand letter would be the appropriate first step." I nodded at his words. Not an emotional response, but a business-like solution. That was how I had lived as an investment analyst. "There are sufficient legal grounds for the repayment demand," Harrison continued his explanation. "However, since this is a family matter, we should leave room for discussion first." It was a thoughtful suggestion befitting an old friend of my father's. That afternoon, I was reviewing the content of the certified letter at the office. The text was written in simple words, avoiding legal jargon. However, each word carried clear intent. As I wrote the address on the envelope, I wondered, would this be the beginning of a new relationship with my family? or the beginning of the end? On my way back from the post office, I stopped at the supermarket. The sight of housewives doing their weekend shopping seemed like a distant world. At the checkout, a wedding invitation peeked out from my wallet. The gold lettering printed on luxury paper now felt ironic. Back at my apartment, there was a new incoming call on my cell phone. It was from the real estate agent handling the apartment that was being prepared as Rachel and her husband's new home. I need to confirm something about the guarantor. Then I remembered, I hadn't just covered the wedding costs, I had also become their guarantor. At dusk, I stood by the window with a wine glass in hand. While watching the streetlights come on one by one, I reread the message that had just arrived from Mother. However, my mind was made up. This isn't about emotions. It should be treated as simply a business matter, just as Father had always taught me. Investment always carries risk. That's why proper planning is necessary. That night, I opened social media. As expected, the scene that unfolded was predictable. My sister's Instagram was filling up with wedding photos. My sister beaming in her pure white wedding dress. Pictures of her nestled close to her groom Michael. Scenes of toasting at the luxurious reception venue. I quietly turned off my smartphone. Tomorrow marks the start of a new week. Important investment cases await at Morgan & Brooks. I must handle everything calmly, without being swept away by emotions. The same applies to the wedding cost repayment claim. Before going to sleep, I gazed at Father's photograph. Dad, I'm not wrong, am I? In the photo, Father smiled gently as always. A few days later, unexpected visitors came to my apartment. The intercom screen showed Mother, my sister, and my sister's husband Michael. After a long silence, I decided to open the door. On the top floor of the high-rise apartment on Greenwich Avenue. The windows offered a distant view of Long Island Sound. Father once said, "This view suits you perfectly," when he recommended this apartment to me. Now, with that view behind me, I faced my family. "Why are you doing this?" Mother's voice broke the silence. Patricia was dressed in her usual designer suit, but her usual dignity was subdued. Everyone at church is gossiping about us. Rachel sat with an unsettled demeanor, unlike her arrogant attitude at the wedding. "We're family, aren't we? Why resort to legal measures?" Beside her, Michael wore an anxious expression. "Let's talk business." I took out the prepared documents. The certificate of selling Father's memorial stocks, payment records for the wedding venue, and the guarantor contract for their new home. All of these were investments I made out of goodwill. When Mother tried to speak, I raised my hand to stop her. "I'm not finished yet." From my desk, I pulled out new documents. It was a repayment plan drafted by Harrison and Partners law firm. Monthly repayment of $500. In case of delay, a late fee of 14% annual interest will be added. My voice was surprisingly calm. These terms are far more favorable than standard consumer finance. But that amount, Rachel's voice trembled. "Our restaurant isn't even on track yet." True, Michael's new Italian restaurant had just opened. Rent in Greenwich is expensive. The repayment plan was set considering your income. I showed them the cash flow projection sheet. "If you cut back on luxuries, it's a manageable amount." Mother sighed deeply. "But a notarized document. This is like we're strangers." To those words I quietly replied, "If we were strangers, I wouldn't offer such favorable terms." Michael spoke for the first time. "Miss Wilson, I'll take responsibility for the repayment." His voice carried resolve. "Once the restaurant's revenue increases, we can repay more. Show results first, then we'll talk about that." He nodded silently at my words. As an investment analyst, I've seen countless business plans. I know well the low success rate of new restaurants. "Please sign here." I presented the notarized document. "Tomorrow we'll complete the formal procedure with a notary present." The air in the room seemed to freeze for a moment. "Is this the end of our relationship?" Mother's voice echoed faintly. Outside the window, the twilight sky was turning purple. "No, this is the beginning of a new relationship." No one argued with my answer. The next day at the notary office along Greenwich Avenue, pages turned one after another on the heavy desk. I could see Rachel's hand trembling slightly as she finished signing. "The contract is now officially established," the notary's voice echoed in the room. I quietly put the documents in my bag. "Don't forget the monthly repayment date." Those were my last words to my family. That evening, while working at the office, I received a message from my sister. "Jen, I promise I'll pay it back." After staring at the screen for a while, I just marked it as read without replying. That night, back at my apartment, I whispered to Father's memorial photograph, "Dad, I think I made the right choice." In the kitchen, the microwave hummed as it heated a dinner for one. This is the beginning of a new normal. There's no time to dwell on sentiments. Tomorrow, new investment case analyses await. Outside the window, Greenwich's streetlights shone as always. Their light felt a bit colder than before, but strangely, it brought me peace. Perhaps this is what it means to become an adult. Keeping family relationships businesslike. It's not sad, rather, it's our new form of bond. 3 years have passed. The scenery of Greenwich Avenue has gradually changed. New buildings have risen, old shops have disappeared, and the flow of people has shifted. But the spire of First Presbyterian Church still stands quietly in the center of town, unchanged. My position at Morgan & Brooks has also changed significantly. My accurate judgment in the Asian market was recognized, and last year, I became the youngest partner. I was selected as one of the 40 most influential women analysts by a prominent Wall Street financial magazine. If Father were watching, he'd surely be proud. I smiled quietly while placing flowers at his grave on a holiday afternoon. William Wilson's gravestone basked in the gentle spring sunlight. Work wasn't the only thing that changed. On holidays, I became a mentor in the Young Women's Leadership Program, advising young women in the community. the importance of financial management and maintaining appropriate boundaries with family. My experiences seem to serve as guideposts for their lives. Above all, new relationships have added color to my life. David, a colleague I met at work, became my tennis partner on weekends. He too had experienced complicated family relationships. A relationship where we understand each other's wounds. It brought me a peace of mind I couldn't have imagined before. Meanwhile, my sister Rachel's life has changed dramatically. The Italian restaurant that opened with such fanfare on Greenwich Avenue didn't last a year. Michael now works at a small pizza shop in New Haven. Although the monthly $500 repayments continue as promised, it seems to be putting significant pressure on their lifestyle. My sister, who used to dress in luxury brands, now makes do with sale items. Her social media posts have lost their former flashiness. "Sis, did you buy another new bag?" When we ran into each other at the supermarket recently, my sister's voice lacked its former arrogance. Instead, there was a tone of resignation, yet also that of an adult who had begun to accept reality. Patricia, my mother, has also changed her position at First Presbyterian Church. With reduced weekly donations, she stopped appearing at important church events. It took 3 years for her to realize that there are things more important than keeping up appearances. Still, Mother continues to call me. Not with financial demands like before, but from a genuine desire to hear her daughter's voice. "I found that wine you like." Her occasional messages now convey such simple daily occurrences. The story of our family, once the talk of Greenwich, is gradually becoming a thing of the past. The First Presbyterian Church community is now abuzz with new topics, but occasionally someone brings up or remember that wedding incident? When they do, people quietly nod, each taking their own lesson from it. Money issues are the touchstone that test family bonds, Attorney Harrison said during a recent consultation. Indeed, that choice greatly changed how our family operates. But perhaps it was a necessary change. Now when I see the transfer notifications for my sister on monthly repayment dates, I don't feel any particular emotion. I simply record it as a business transaction, calculating the remaining balance and entering it into my Excel sheet. I've come to see this as our new form of family relationship. Father's memorial clock quietly marks time on my study wall. I remember him saying, "Time heals all wounds." Indeed, the wounds have healed, and those scars have made me stronger. Outside the window, spring breeze was scattering cherry blossoms. Looking down at Greenwich's cityscape, I realized, this is the path I chose. No regrets. Rather, this choice has helped me grow into a truly independent woman. The calendar on my desk was filled with next month's schedule, important meetings at Morgan & Brooks, Young Women's Leadership Program seminars, and tennis with David. My new life had taken firm root. At dusk, I stand by the window as usual, sipping from my glass. Tasting the Chardonnay that Father loved, I smile quietly. Life doesn't always go as planned, but finding and walking your own path within it, that's what true strength is, as I now understand.